Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm really excited to jump into something that's been generating a ton of buzz lately. The U.S. Executive Order on Digital Assets. I bet a lot of you are wondering what it's all about or what it could mean for you, Eigen.
Absolutely. It's a big deal. This order marks a major shift in US policy and well, it really feels like a turning point. It's pretty fascinating to see the US move from a, more cautious approach to actively promoting innovation in the digital asset space.
Okay, so we're not talking about a small tweak here. This sounds like a whole new ballgame. So to really unpack this, we've got a few sources to help us out. First, we've got the official White House press release, always a good place to start. Then we've got an in-depth analysis of the order to really get into the weeds. And then we have two summaries that are looking specifically at the impact on Latin America. One's for executives and another for entrepreneurs. Seems like everyone's trying to figure out what this means for them.
Yeah, and what I think is really interesting is how this order goes beyond just words. It actually revokes previous frameworks and orders, signaling a clear intention to create a whole new regulatory landscape.
So it's not just talk, it's action. But before we get lost in the details, let's take a step back and look at the big picture. What's the main message of this executive order?
Well, the order states its goal pretty explicitly to establish U.S. leadership in digital financial technology while safeguarding economic liberty. And that's a pretty powerful statement right there. It's really setting the stage for a new era of digital finance.
Promote leadership and protect liberty. Sounds pretty grand. But what does that look like in practice? What does that actually mean?
One of the key principles the order outlines is ensuring individuals and businesses have the freedom to operate in the digital asset space. It means you can develop on public blockchains, mine, transact, even self-custody your digital assets without the fear of unnecessary restrictions or, being penalized for it.
So this self-custody concept, what's the big deal with that? How is that really different from how we handle our finances now?
It's a pretty significant departure from traditional finance. Self-custody means you're in complete control of your assets. No more relying on banks or third parties. You hold the keys, literally. Think about it. If you're worried about bank failures or government overreach, self-custody provides a level of autonomy and security that you just can't get in the traditional system.
Yeah, that's a compelling argument for sure, especially
Yeah.
for those who are concerned about control and security. There's another piece of this order that caught my eye, and that's the emphasis on promoting the sovereignty of the U.S. dollar. What's the rationale there?
Yeah, that's where it gets interesting. The order seems to position dollar-backed stablecoins as a crucial tool for maintaining the dollar's global dominance in this new digital age. It's a direct response to the idea of other countries, or maybe even global entities, controlling the future of money.
So it's not just about promoting innovation within the U.S., but also protecting U.S. interests on a global scale, almost shaping the future of finance on their own terms.
Exactly. They're laying the groundwork for a financial system that aligns with their vision of economic freedom and U.S. leadership.
Okay, so we've got freedom to operate, focus on the U.S. dollar, and this whole new world of possibilities with self-custody. What else stands out to you as we start digging deeper into this order?
Well, one thing that jumps out at me is the order's clarity when it comes to defining key terms like digital asset, blockchain, even CBDC. It's like they're setting a clear foundation for understanding the scope and intent of the order.
So they're establishing a common language, making sure everyone's on the same page right from the start. No more confusion or misinterpretations. That's smart.
Absolutely. And then there's the creation of the President's Working Group on Digital Asset Markets. This is a high-level group with officials from Treasury, Justice, Commerce, Homeland Security. We've even got the SEC and CFTC chairs in there, bringing in the big guns.
Wow, that is a serious lineup. This is no casual brainstorming session. They're serious about tackling this.
Yeah, they have a huge mandate too. Review existing regulations, propose a brand new federal regulatory framework for digital assets, and they're even evaluating the creation of a national digital asset stockpile, potentially using seized cryptocurrencies. Imagine the U.S. government holding a stash of Bitcoin.
Okay, now that's an image that's going to stick with me. The government as a crypto whale. What are the implications of that? We could spend a whole deep dive just on that. But for now, let's focus on what this working group's creation tells us about the U.S.'s approach.
It shows they're not messing around. They're diving headfirst into the digital asset world, ready to play with the big fish, putting serious resources behind shaping this landscape, both domestically and globally.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. Freedom to operate, focus on stablecoins in the U.S. dollar, and a high-powered task force ready to reshape the regulatory landscape. Before we jump into the implications for Latin America, I want to pause for a second, make sure we're connecting this back to our listener.
Great point. This isn't just some abstract policy discussion happening in a vacuum. This has real-world implications for all of us, especially anyone involved in crypto, blockchain, or even those just interested in the future of finance. This order could influence everything from how we invest to how we make everyday purchases.
Exactly. Think about the impact stablecoins could have if they become a mainstream payment option, or what it could mean for the global financial system if the U.S. becomes a major holder of cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap our heads around, and it brings up some important questions. How will this impact the average person? Will this make our lives easier, or will it create new challenges?
All right, so we've laid the groundwork and shown why this matters to our listener. Now let's zoom in on Latin America and see how this executive order might play out in the region. You ready to dive deeper?
Let's do it. This is where it gets even more interesting.
So we've got the U.S. setting the stage with this executive order, but what does it all mean for Latin America? Our sources seem to suggest it could be a pretty big deal, both in terms of opportunities and challenges. What jumps out at you from those Latin America-focused summaries?
I think one of the most striking things is the potential for blockchain technology and stablecoins to really transform different sectors in the region. We're talking about real-world applications that could have a tangible impact on people's lives, not just, theoretical stuff.
So not just hype and speculation, but actual solutions to real problems. Give me an example. How could this actually make a difference for someone in Latin America?
Well, imagine a small business owner in Argentina trying to import goods from Brazil. They often face high transaction fees and delays because of currency conversions. But if they use stablecoins, they could send payments almost instantly, with much lower fees and way less volatility. I mean, that could be huge for their bottom line.
Okay, yeah, I see how that could be a game changer for businesses, especially smaller ones that are trying to navigate all the complexities of international trade. What about the everyday consumer? How could this impact them?
Think about someone in Venezuela where the local currency has been incredibly unstable. Stablecoins could offer a more reliable way to store and transfer value, protecting their savings from inflation and making everyday transactions easier.
So it's not just about fancy technology, it's about providing people with more financial security and stability. That's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
But Latin America has a pretty diverse regulatory landscape. How do these local regulations fit into this evolving global picture?
Yeah, that's a key question. One of the summaries we looked at highlighted the need for Latin American countries to adapt their regulations to align with this changing global landscape. It's not about blindly following the US's lead, but finding ways to integrate these new technologies while also addressing local needs and concerns.
So it's a bit of a balancing act, right? Fostering innovation while also making sure consumers are protected and maintaining financial stability. Not easy.
Definitely not. It requires governments, businesses, and individuals to work together to find the right balance. This is actually where I think our listeners can really make a difference. By staying informed, engaging in these discussions, and advocating for policies that support responsible innovation, they can help shape the future of digital assets in their own communities.
I like that. We're not just passive observers in this. We have a role to play in shaping this new landscape. But let's get back to the U.S. for a moment and that powerful working group they've created. What are some of the key things we should be watching for as they develop this new regulatory framework?
Well, one of the main areas they're focusing on is creating a framework for the issuance and operation of digital assets, including stablecoins. They'll be looking at market structure, oversight, consumer protection, risk management, all the big things.
Sounds like they have their work cut out for them. Any hints about what direction they might be heading in?
It's early days, but the order itself emphasizes a few key principles. Technology-neutral regulations, frameworks that can adapt to emerging technologies, transparent decision-making, and clear jurisdictional boundaries.
So they're aiming for a balanced approach that encourages innovation while also mitigating risks.
Got it.
But what about this idea of a national digital asset stockpile? That's a pretty wild concept, right?
It is. The order doesn't give a lot of specifics about how it would be managed or utilized, but it does mention the possibility of using seized cryptocurrencies. Imagine the implications if the U.S. government becomes a major holder of Bitcoin or other digital assets.
That's another deep dive waiting to happen for sure. It feels like we're just scratching the surface of what this executive order could mean for the future of digital assets, both in the U.S. and globally.
Absolutely. And as this new regulatory landscape takes shape, it's going to be more important than ever to stay informed. This isn't just about abstract financial concepts. This could actually have a real impact on your business, your investments, even your personal finances.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential impact on Latin America and touched on some of the key areas this working group will be tackling. But there's one big question that keeps coming up. What does the U.S.'s stance on CBDCs mean for the future of the dollar?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The U.S. seems to be betting on a future where private digital currencies, especially dollar-backed stablecoins, play a major role in maintaining the dollar's global dominance. But it's a gamble, no doubt.
It is. They're kind of going against the grain here. A lot of countries are actively exploring CBDCs, but the U.S. is drawing a hard line in the sand. What's the thinking behind that? Are they just being cautious, or is there something else going on?
Well, the order itself cites concerns about financial stability, individual privacy, and national sovereignty. They seem to believe that a CBDC would pose too great a risk to these core values.
So they're choosing freedom and control over the potential efficiency and convenience of a central bank-controlled digital currency.
Interesting. But is that a sustainable strategy in the long run? I mean, what if the rest of the world embraces CBDCs and the US gets left behind?
That's the big unknown. If other countries move ahead with their own CBDCs and they gain widespread adoption, the dollar could end up on the sidelines of the digital economy. It's a risky move for sure, but it's also a pretty bold statement about the U.S.'s vision for the future of finance.
Okay, so we've got this tension between embracing innovation and holding on to certain principles. It's complex with a lot of moving parts. Before we jump into potential global implications of all of this, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned so far.
We've seen how this executive order could open up new opportunities in Latin America, especially for businesses and individuals looking for more efficient and stable financial solutions. We also talked about the challenges that come with integrating these new technologies into existing systems and the importance of finding that balance between innovation and regulation. And we dug into the U.S.'s somewhat contradictory stance of promoting digital assets while rejecting the idea of a central bank-controlled digital dollar. It's a bold move, that's for sure, and one that could have significant consequences for the global financial system. Ready to explore those potential consequences.
Absolutely. Let's dive into the deep end and see what we can uncover.
So last time, we were talking about how the U.S. is making this big bet by promoting their vision of a free and open digital asset ecosystem. But will the rest of the world really just follow their lead? What are the potential consequences of this, especially with the U.S. seemingly rejecting the idea of a CBDC?
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation. The US is basically saying we're going to do things our way, but that doesn't necessarily mean everyone else is going to fall in line. Actually, the US's stance might even speed up the development and adoption of CBDCs in other countries.
So instead of maintaining control, they could actually end up pushing other countries to create alternatives to the dollar-dominated system.
Exactly. Like, think about China. If they successfully roll out their digital yuan and it starts getting used more and more in international trade, that could definitely start to chip away at the dollar's dominance. Other countries might see that and think, hey, we should do that too. And then you end up with a more multipolar world with multiple digital currencies all competing for influence.
Okay, so paint a picture for me. Imagine a world where the digital yuan, the euro, and maybe even some private stablecoins are all big players alongside the dollar. What would that mean for the global financial system? Would it make things more stable, or would it just create more chaos?
That's the million-dollar question, and honestly, there's no easy answer. I mean, on the one hand, a more diverse system could mean that the global economy isn't so reliant on a single currency, which could potentially reduce some of that systemic risk. But then on the other hand, it could also lead to more fragmentation, more volatility, maybe even some geopolitical tensions.
So it's not necessarily good or bad, it just depends on how things shake out.
Pretty much, yeah. It all comes down to how these different currencies and payment systems interact with each other, how they're regulated, and which currencies different countries decide to align with. There's a ton of uncertainty, but one thing's for sure. We're in uncharted territory.
And you know what they say about uncharted territory? It's full of opportunity, right?
For sure. This whole shift towards digital assets gives us a chance to rethink how the global financial system works, from the ground up. It's a chance to create something more inclusive, more efficient, and just more resilient overall. But it also comes with risks, and it's really important that we're careful about how we navigate those risks.
So for our listeners out there trying to wrap their heads around all of this, what are the key takeaways? What should they be thinking about, exploring, maybe even questioning as they watch this digital revolution unfold?
I think the most important thing is to stay curious, stay informed, and don't just accept the way things are. Do your own research, question those assumptions and really explore the different perspectives out there on this super complex issue. Think about the potential impact on your own life and your work, and be ready to adapt as things continue to change, because they definitely will. The future of finance is being written right now, and we all have a role to play in shaping it.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. A huge thank you to our expert for sharing their insights and helping us all navigate this amazing and ever-changing world of digital assets. And to our listeners, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep those minds churning. Thanks for joining us.